Right, long time no make a YouTube video. Real struggle putting things together to make it. The brain soon forgets how. Right, I'll keep this short because I've probably lost the art of being. No, I've always been a bit waffly. So the idea is that something clicked in me brain this morning that didn't answer a question that the brain's been setting itself for 30 odd years, but at least made a little move. Now, this was instigated by watching a Gary video this morning where he was talking to some girl. She could well have been English, I think, and explaining to her that all her hopey, soapy ideas are fruitless and will not amount to anything. A life is shit. Nothing I can really particularly disagree with. There's always this nagging doubt from the brain that this, though, is useless information because the brain knows that it's got this life and has got to damn well get on with it to a greater extent. No, it's just got to get on with it. And what I saw quite clearly was the logic of Gary's argument. If you're arguing it from an anti-natalist position. But maybe it was, I've just been out for a bike ride and was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about psychology of the this, that and the other, and talking about cognitive dissonance and how the brain, this was about religious people, but it doesn't really matter. We all know it's the same on so many subjects, that if you're kind of proved wrong, often you just stick your stick in even harder and cling on to what you were pushing in the first place. You don't give up. You just dig in. That is to say, what am I saying? The girl was putting forward coping mechanisms, and in her own way she was being useful. Gary was being useful to people that were already anti-natalists, giving them ammunition to be better anti-natalists. And maybe that there might be a margin. There's a great 90 whatever percentage of the people that are going to be natalists or not going to think about the position. There's always a margin, a butting up an edge, where the evaporation is from the main bulk that could be affected by the talk, but the margin's very light, and the evaporation, the heat generated isn't enough to cause much evaporation into the bulk of the people that just aren't going to give it any thought. And they're not going to give it any thought because they are effectively stuck in the position of having to cope with the life that has been imposed upon them. I have always known that when you look at it dispassionately, life never adds up to anything worthwhile at all, because it's not going anywhere and doing anything. There's nothing you can do or say, in my opinion, not even being an anti-natalist, that can possibly make the lot of people, the world or the universe any better. It's just a completely useless mess, always has been, always will be. Let's put that aside. The people in it will have to cope with in it. And one of the greatest coping mechanisms, which was put forward by this English girl, was hope. There's always hope in your darkest times that things will get better. And it is a very, very effective, efficient coping mechanism. Now, the thing that me brain's been working on for an awful long time has been, when I see, let's say, for example, people watching television, an awful lot of television during their life. Now, in the past videos that I've used the example of watching Friends or something. It's not an aggressive thing to do. It's just a purely passive way of passing time. And I have always looked for an argument whereby I could make the logical argument that reading Shakespeare, for example, was better than watching Friends on the television. And I've never been able to do it. Maybe even quite obviously, you probably understand why, quite obviously, I have not been able to do it. But it's bothered me that I haven't. And I've tried to even stretch the extremes and not really been able to make the logic for it either. As in, here we have the discussion between Friends and reading Shakespeare, or reading a history book or something that is intellectual, and watching Friends is just passive piddling. Or you could call it watching sport on the television, whatever. And then you stretch it right out as far as you can to raping somebody or helping rape victims cope with their trauma. And I have not got to any sort of point where it isn't all a grey area. You don't actually do any better or worse anywhere with anything that you do. But that's not the... Again, that's another thing that's not the point. I think the point is that I wanted to make is the hope thing is perhaps, as a coping mechanism, the most efficient of the coping mechanisms, or the basis for the best coping mechanism. And here we have to divide between the uselessness, the grey area for me, brain, of it all. Throw that away, because that is in itself useless as well. And go for the usefulness of people have to live with the life that they have got. Normal talk, whereby one coping mechanism can actually be deemed to be better than another coping mechanism. Now, this can be conflated, confused, confuddled with the fact that it's all useless anyway. But hopefully we're not going to do that. We're going to keep them completely separate and say that watching Friends... No, let's go for the sport. Watching sport people run around, kick things, throw things, bash things about is not as good a coping mechanism as going out and doing it yourself. Let's say playing golf, because we can't all play rough team sports. If you play golf, you've got much more hope potential than you have watching golf on the television. Your golf team might win the Ryder Cup, or the person that you particularly like hitting the ball around might win the hitting the ball around tournament. And that's your spike of wonderfulness. Woo, hey, he won, her, she won. That Michelle Wee, I used to like watching her knock balls about. Anyway, but playing golf, you've got an endless supply of hope. There's almost no end to the amount of hope that you can do going out and golfing. And that's all this video is about. If you want to judge things like watching television, oh, you're wasting your time just staying in and watching television all day. you've got to actually put it in a category, and I think it's fair to put it in a category that is effective, efficient coping mechanisms. Watching television is a pretty pathetic coping mechanism. Going out and doing something that you can actually get better at, playing chess, doing anything that you can get better at, gives you so much more potential. And if you've got potential, you've got hope. And if you've got hope, you're coping a lot better because you've got much more spikes that are going to potentially come in. And that's all the video is. It's all useless anyway. But if you want to do it better, do things that give you more hope. And those things are with potential. You need hope potential. And things like chess or golf give you much more hope potential. And hopefully you can think of lots more things that give you lots of hope potential, and recognize things that give you really very little hope potential at all, like expecting to find something decent on the television. There is a bit of hope potential there, but experience should tell you there's not a lot. Where over here, use a bit of thinky, you might be able to find better things. And that's it. That's the video. Thank you. Bye.